So one of the musicals that I really love right now is Hamilton, and Lin-Manuel Miranda just crushes in it. You know, he wrote it, he produced it, and he stars in it. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about Hamilton is that, like any production, you have to have an understudy. So while he's up there performing and singing his heart out, there's actually someone that is right alongside in case something goes wrong. And in that case, for Alexander Hamilton, there's someone that knows all the lines, all the dance steps, like they know it all, just in case something happens. And with that, what I want people to think about is that we also step into a story. We step into a story that already began. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the story that we step into is the story of God's story. And it began with creation. God created everything, including us. Then it also includes the kind of part 2, which would be the fall, that we've all sinned. Part 3 would be redemption. So that's kind of the part of God's story that gets a lot of focus, which is what Jesus Christ accomplished through his life, through his death, through his resurrection, all that. That's redemption. So that was part 1, part 2, part 3. But there's a 4th part that a lot of people don't know about, and that's restoration. So now that Jesus has come and done his work of redemption, now we're in part 4. We're in the last part. God wants to restore the entire world. Like Jesus' prayer that he actually wants us to pray over and over and over is, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God actually wants to restore the entire earth. And so the way that I think about with Hamilton is, imagine Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's gone through it and he's got 10 minutes left in it, and he's just killing it, but it's gonna hit that climax, right where you need someone to just finish strong. And then Lin pulls a hammy. He has to stumble off the stage and everyone's going, what's gonna happen? Well, it's as if we're the understudy. We step into this story, but we step into a story that already began. It already had part 1, it had part 2, it had part 3. In fact, it was in the midst of part 4. And we step in. And the thing that's really kind of cool about being an understudy, or different people who play roles in musicals and things like that, is everyone does it a little bit differently. So there's a lot of freedom about how they do it. They're not going to do it the same exact way. If you or I stepped into Hamilton, we're not going to do it how Lin does it, right? But we also need to know what the story was before and where it's going at the end, which is that we do know that Jesus is going to return, that he's going to restore the world to right, and that there's going to be a new heaven and new earth. And so the cool thing about the storyline that we step into is that we can be creative, but we can't go on our own track. So when we read the Bible and we see where we step into it, God actually wants to honor our different abilities and interests and our skills, because we have a role to play in the way that God is restoring this world. And so my challenge for you is to think about, what are the unique skills? What are the unique passions? What are the things that get you fired up because of the way that God made you, that you can play your role in part 4? And in order to do that, look at part 1, 2, and 3. Get really familiar with creation, fall, redemption. Get familiar with what's to come, but think about, what role do you play? Because God has called you into the game about what God wants to do in the world. So think about that, and maybe have a conversation with someone about that. And ideally, talk to a mentor and say, hey, I think God has made me in these different ways, and I want to be a part of the way that God's restoring the world. Let's talk about that. So that's my challenge for today.